I'm going to choose a room that's about 250 square feet. In the middle of the new room with the smell of fresh wood in the air. It can't, Lucas said with a joyful laugh. I stopped unpacking. Is she going for a room that's about 250 square feet? What in the world is Jessica talking about? I'm taking this corner room, Lucas announced, making me even more unable to grasp the situation. If you defy me, I'll be taking care of you, Lucas declared with a sneer, glaring at me. But inside, my mind was still in chaos. Whose house are we talking about? Feeling that something wasn't adding up with my eldest son and his wife, I questioned them. Hey, like to mention, they both gave me a vacant look, and finally, I began to understand the situation. I see. That's what this is about. This could be a good opportunity to set things straight with my eldest son, Lucas, and his wife, Jessica, who had been running me ragged for years. I must not let this chance pass by. For long, I felt a fiery determination inside me. My name is Catherine Thompson. I'm turning 65 this year. My husband passed away from pancreatic cancer 5 years ago. By the time the cancer was found, it was too late, and he passed away a few months later. The abruptness of it all left me unable to catch up emotionally, and for a while, I lived like a shell of a person, just eating, going to the bathroom and bathing, simply passing the days. Lately, my legs have been getting worse, making it hard to live on my own. It was my eldest son, Lucas, who brought a ray of hope into my wilted life. Lucas was getting married, and he and his fiancée, Jessica, expressed a desire to live with me. I was taken aback when Lucas suddenly brought up cohabitation. Because up to that point, he had been living in the company housing provided by the regional bank he worked for. I had simply assumed that they would naturally set up their own place once married. But contrary to my expectations, my son and his wife to be wanted to live with me. I hadn't even met Jessica yet, and I didn't know anything about her. But for me, having lost the love of my life and feeling a gaping hole in my heart, Lucas's offer to live together felt like a consolation sent from God. Because of course, I'll contribute to the household expenses. Oh, I'm fine with it. I found myself quickly agreeing before I knew it, and Lucas smiled with satisfaction. Got it. Then I'll bring Jessica over next week. Take care, he said, and with those words, Lucas left. Despite his somewhat rough personality, I always thought that was just because he was in front of his parents, maybe showing some rebellion. To me, he was still my dear child. I felt as if my once lonely life had suddenly been illuminated. Just a week later, as promised, the eldest son couple came to our house. Here we are. Despite it being our first meeting, I was surprised by how Jessica confidently strode in, her footsteps echoing loudly. Despite being the same age as Lucas, 30 years old, she wore a skirt shorter than knee length. Her hair was dyed pink and her nails were glittery and flamboyant. Oh, nice to meet you. You're Jessica, right? Yeah, that's me. But what's with this house? It's kind of run down and small, isn't it? I was taken aback as Jessica entered the house and immediately started criticizing it without even a proper greeting. That's true, but it's better than nothing, so bear with it. Sure, Lucas retorted with a dismissive tone, which confused me even more since, just a week ago, he had been so keen on moving in. Despite the sudden rudeness, I reminded myself that we were going to be living together from now on, and I didn't want to start off on the wrong foot. So, I sat Lucas and Jessica down and served them tea. Do you work, Jessica? There's no way I'm working, it's just too much hassle. Oh, I see. And what about you, do you work? No, I've been a homemaker. Wow, so you're living off your husband's pension? Must be nice. You can just live it up without working a day. Despite both of us being homemakers, I looked at Jessica in disbelief as she sarcastically laughed and called my situation quite the nice position. I do receive a survivor's pension, but that's my only income. It's nowhere near enough for a luxurious life. I'm just getting by day to day. Living leisurely is nothing but a pipe dream. More importantly, Jessica, how should we divide the household chores? Since we're both homemakers, maybe we can split them equally? Wanting to change the subject, I proposed this to Jessica. Living together means the three of us supporting and helping each other out in our daily lives. I assumed that since Lucas would be working during the day and contributing financially, Jessica would be willing to help with the chores. However, she frowned visibly at my suggestion. Divide the chores? No way, you should handle all that. I don't know anything about this house. class, and I'm busy hanging out with friends. With that sharp retort, Jessica looked at me with a piercing gaze, as if dumping all the responsibilities on me. Well then, just help out whenever you can, please. I couldn't ask too much of Jessica since we had just met today, so I ended up conceding. On the issue of chores, Jessica wore a smirk as if she had won. I felt overwhelmed and dismayed thinking about our future life together. Living with 3 other people was a far cry from the married life I had initially imagined. First off, Lucas would say he's too busy with work and wouldn't come home until late at night. Friends, true to her initial declaration. Jessica didn't do any household chores. I thought she might at least be able to take out the trash, but she seemed to have trouble getting up in the morning and couldn't manage to do it on time. Thus, reluctantly, I found myself doing all the housework for 3 before moving in together. I thought this would fill the void of missing my husband, but now I regretted it, thinking maybe I was better off alone. Jessica wasn't just neglecting the household chores, she was out and about every day. Given her flashy appearance, I had suspected she might be a bit wild, but to be out playing every day really was quite the nice position indeed. Every time Jessica came home, she was always carrying shopping bags from well-known international brands. These were brands that sold luxury items I could never afford on my pension. When I asked, "How did you afford these?" she laughed through her nose and said, "Obviously. I bought them with my allowance." However, I knew Lucas's salary wasn't high enough to afford multiple high-end brand items. If Jessica had been saving up her allowance bit by bit to buy these things, I could understand, but buying brand name items nearly every day doesn't leave room to save. I wondered where she could possibly be getting so much money. And there was another unexpected issue for me. Lucas wasn't contributing financially to the household. About a month after we started living together, I thought Lucas would have transferred some of his salary into our household account by now, so I checked at the bank. But there was no money from Lucas. Before we started living together, I remembered Lucas saying, "I'll contribute financially to the household." Well, it's only been a month. Maybe he's just late or forgot, I thought, and went home without much suspicion that day. However, as 2 months, then 3 months passed, there was still no financial contribution from Lucas. I finally decided to tell him that it was impossible to cover the living expenses for 3 people with just my pension. Could you contribute a little to the household? The budget for groceries is really tight. Ah, sorry. I forgot. I'll make sure to put in some next time. Hearing the words "I forgot," I felt relieved and believed that Lucas would start contributing financially from next month. However, his promise seemed to be just an excuse to placate a child, and he never actually made the transfer. He pleaded with Lucas several times, but he was usually drunk by the time he got home and quickly forgot what I had said. Or perhaps he was pretending to forget. When it became clear that I wouldn't receive any money from Lucas, I had no choice but to find a part-time job. I started working at a local flower shop. Returning to work after so long was exciting, but the long hours were tough on my body, which was already past retirement age. Still, the pressure of earning enough to support 3 people weighed heavily on me. I worked 6 to 8 hours during the day, similar to a full-time job, then came home to prepare dinner for 3. Jessica, as usual, did not start helping with the chores even though I had begun working. As on the contrary, she would throw tantrums over the meals I cooked, like a small child. One evening, she flipped her plate over and exclaimed, "What is this? It tastes awful. I want a curry. Can't make it again." It wasn't just one day that such incidents occurred, but again and again. Jessica would find fault with the meals I prepared based on her mood for the day. I felt a surge of anger and sadness, but realized that arguing with the unreasonable Jessica was futile, so I silently remade the meal. I wanted to break free from this life that felt like slavery. I can't go on like this. Instinctively, I knew I couldn't go on like this. So, I decided to find a hobby to distract myself and asked the manager of the flower shop, "Can you think of any hobbies I could do at home?" The manager, my Mrs. Smith, was a young woman in her 40s who you could tell must have been very beautiful in her 20s, fitting the image of a florist perfectly. "How about something handmade?" "You're welcome to use the flowers that we're going to discard." Following the manager's advice, I decided to make jewelry using flowers. Making jewelry was a lot of fun. I was naturally skilled with my hands and quickly got the hang of making jewelry that looked just as good as what you'd find in a store. The manager, who was knowledgeable, even showed me a site where I could sell my handmade creations. Just out of curiosity, I put the jewelry I made up for sale on a website. just out of curiosity. I posted some of my jewelry on the selling site, and within a week, orders started coming in, and I began to earn an income from it. The joy of earning money from a hobby was exhilarating, and I made jewelry in every spare moment I had. Jessica scoffed at my effort, saying, "Hey, what's this? People actually buy these?" But I ignored her. When she realized I wasn't paying attention to her, she tried to annoy me by saying, "You're just like a burden to society, an old person who's useless." But I didn't react to that either. No matter what Jessica said, I wasn't afraid anymore. 5 years had passed since I started making jewelry. And I turned 65. Recently, I bought a house nearby. I loved the house I was living in because of the memories with my husband, but it was getting old, and everything was starting to fall apart. So I was satisfied to be able to buy a new house. And as I was thinking about living there without my eldest son couple, Jessica peeked over my shoulder at the floor plan of my new home. "Wow, is this a new house? What's this? Are you moving?" Jessica exclaimed with a cheerfulness I had never heard from her before. Looking at floor plans is indeed fun, and I like it too, but I never imagined that Jessica, who always seemed so angry, would get this excited. "Yes, that's right. Wow, it's really big." Jessica was absorbed in the floor plan, forgetting herself. For the first time in 5 years of living together, I saw a childlike side to Jessica. After that, I was busy buying furniture for the new house and packing up for the movie. Lucas and Jessica, as usual, did whatever they pleased, paying no mind to my busyness. It's on the day of the move. I had some acquaintances to help with the big items, so I left the house with just one suitcase. The new house is big, isn't it? It's spacious. I've seen the layout. The eldest son couple seemed eager to see the new house, and they were more excited than usual. I took Lucas and Jessica to the new home. Upon seeing the stylish black exterior, wooden door, and the large garden, both of them exclaimed, "Wow." The garden was my own personal touch, something I insisted on for my hobby of growing flowers. When we entered, the expansive room spread out before us, and I felt very satisfied. Having bad knees, I made sure the house was single-story and had handrails installed, which turned out to be the right decision. Now, it's super spacious and super clean. It's more than I expected. Just the two of them, eyes sparkling as if they owned the place, walked around the house while I was unpacking, cheering every now and then. That's when I began to feel a sense of unease, thinking how, after they had looked through all the rooms, they came back to where I was. It's in the middle of the new room, with the smell of fresh wood in the air, and Jessica said with a joyful laugh, "I'm going to choose a room that's about 250 square feet." What in the world is Jessica talking about? Lucas announced I'm taking this corner room, making me even more unable to grasp the situation. "If you defy me, I will be taking care of you," Lucas declared with a sneer, glaring at me. But inside, my mind was still in chaos. Whose house are we talking about? Feeling that something wasn't adding up with my eldest son and his wife. I questioned them. Where? They both gave me a vacant look, and finally, I began to understand the situation. I see. That's what this is about. This could be a good opportunity to set things straight with my eldest son, Lucas, and his wife, Jessica, who has been running me ragged for years. I must not let this chance pass by alone. I felt a fiery determination inside me. I bought this house for myself. I explained the reasons for buying the house to my eldest son and his wife, who were standing there in front of me. I told them about the original house deteriorating with age, my thoughts on wanting to end our cohabitation, and how we considered that it might be more comfortable for Lucas and Jessica to live on their own without me. Deepening the cohabitation. The you talking about? Yes. I haven't heard anything about this. I thought we were going to live in this house. The two were bewildered by my confession. From my perspective, I couldn't comprehend the nerve of the eldest son couple who seemed intent on living with me indefinitely. Moreover, I never said a single word about us living together in this new house. If we were going to live together, I surely would have consulted them about the floor plan to some extent. I hadn't discussed anything about the house with my eldest son couple, so the fact that they assumed they would be living here too was a real surprise. I'm sorry if it wasn't clear, but I thought if I explained it in detail, you might insist on coming along. And since I was only packing my things, I thought you would have realized. Or it's even today. I assumed you were just coming to see my new place. After all, Jessica, you dislike everything about my cooking and cleaning, don't you? I never thought that you would actually want to continue living with me. When I said that, heavy with irony, Jessica was at a loss for words, uttering only a stifled But that's weird. How come you have the money to buy such a house? I'd looked through the household account as much as I could and never saw that kind of money. Oh, never mind. Lucas's face turned pale as if he had let something slip by accident. I was aware that Lucas had been taking money from the household funds. I had stayed silent because I was waiting to see when Lucas would reflect on his actions. If he had shown even the slightest hint of remorse, I might have consulted him about the new house. But Lucas hadn't just failed to contribute financially to the house. He had been using the household money for himself, so I had resolved not to hold back anymore. I earned the money myself. It was about 5 years ago, I think. I started making jewelry as a hobby, remember? The florist manager suggested it to me. Initially, I was just selling a little bit on a sales website, but then famous influencers featured my jewelry on their social media. After that, my creations started selling like crazy, and my income increased significantly. Yes, the reason I, who was living on a pension, could afford a house was because of my success in selling jewelry. Of course, even with the buzz, jewelry sales alone wouldn't have made enough money to buy a house. I received invitations from various apparel and jewelry companies, participated in tie-up projects, and got advertisements. I wanted to use the substantial amount of money I earned, which I couldn't have achieved with just my part-time job, to buy a new house because of the strained living situation with my eldest son couple. It's a lie. There's no way you can earn money like that. Jessica screamed in denial of the reality. Up to this year, when she turned 35, Jessica had hardly ever worked. Yet she was always splurging on luxury brands, indulging in extravagance. It was no surprise that someone like her couldn't understand how to earn money. I know about you. Jessica, I heard you dropped out of high school, had a fight with your parents, and ran away from home. You were homeless, lied about your age to work nights, right? I can sympathize with that, even if it wasn't the right thing to do. But after quitting that job, just wandering around aimlessly, hanging out with bad influences, splurging on luxury items, and then it even led to shoplifting, didn't it? Oh. Jessica's face showed shock, clearly not expecting me to confront her about shoplifting. I had suspected Jessica of shoplifting about a year after we started living together. I always thought it was strange that she was wearing only luxury items right from the start. There's no way Lucas's salary could cover the cost of such high-end brands. I immediately suspected shoplifting. One afternoon, when Jessica went out, I discreetly followed her, and sure enough, she was guilty. I could have confronted her right there and then, but knowing Jessica, she would have likely talked her way out of it. So, I decided to record evidence of her shoplifting on my phone, thinking that if she didn't change her ways, I would turn it over to the police someday. I have proof. Look, I said, showing her the video. Jessica's face tensed even more upon seeing it. Just with the evidence before her, she couldn't say anything in return and just hung her head low. And Lucas, stealing money from the bank where you work, that's just the lowest of the low. You must have been in debt, right? How did you know that, Mom? No, it was Lucas who started to tremble, exiting a plate trance. I must have seemed like a police officer about to question them about the crimes they had committed. You see, the daughter of my florist's manager just started working as a new graduate, graduating at the same company as you this year, in the same department no less. She told me that she saw you pocketing the money that customers entrusted to the bank. Being new and worried about making a false accusation against a senior, she hasn't spoken up about it to anyone. But I thought to myself, if anyone at that bank would steal their own company's money, it would be you. This is what I heard, so there's no evidence. But given that Lucas was giving Jessica a substantial allowance every month, never contributing any money to the house, and actually stealing from the household funds, it seemed likely to be true. That's Smith. I educated her thoroughly, yet she's so ungrateful. Lucas fumed, shaking with anger at the manager's daughter's betrayal. Hearing Lucas's words, I took it as an admission of his theft and seized the moment to lash out. So you educated her? You probably thought you were the most important person in this house, didn't you? Acting all high and mighty at work too, looking down on everyone else. But too bad. That won't work with me. This house is a prime example. I earned the money and bought this house with my own effort. You're not the great one here. Of course. I'm not saying I am either, but at least I won't let a house that I bought with money I worked hard for be taken away by you too. Now please leave immediately. My scream sent Lucas and Jessica fleeing from the house in terror. I breathed a sigh of relief. From tomorrow, I would no longer have to see those two. Just the thought made my heart feel lighter. Later, I reported Lucas and Jessica's crimes to the police. The police immediately looked into it. And frankly, there wasn't much to investigate. The evidence of Jessica's shoplifting and Lucas's theft was clear as day on the security cameras. They were taken away by the police without any fuss, and seeing my child and his wife being led away, I felt no stir of emotion. I could only think they had to fend for themselves now. Initially, I was pleased with my son and his wife's intentions to comfort me when we started living together, but as I lived with these two who did as they pleased, my stress accumulated. In retrospect, it's clear that when they brought up living with me, their true goal was to have me do all the housework while they lived comfortably, saying goodbye to a life of being insulted and having money taken by Lucas and Jessica. I now feel refreshed. Even if they are released by the police, they'll be too busy paying off their debts. I'm certain their marriage will fall apart, given they can barely manage household chores. But I am resolute in my decision not to help them ever again. I vowed to lead a life free from any ties to my eldest son and his wife, while continuing my part-time job at the flower shop. I've been putting even more effort into making jewelry. When I revealed that the flowers used in my jewelry came from the flower shop where I work, an unprecedented number of customers started to visit, responding to customers' requests to use flowers as parts for their jewelry. I also began selling flowers specifically for this purpose. The manager showed concern, saying, if your jewelry business is that successful, you could just focus on that, but I shook my head. After all, it was a hobby recommended to me by Manager Smith. I believe if using flowers from the florist in my jewelry helps the shop flourish, then that's the best outcome. I plan to continue walking this new path in life, enriched by both my work and my hobby. I work for a big corporation, so I'll work for both of us, no worries. That's what Tom said when we were engaged, but as soon as we got married, he completely changed. He and his son, Mike, started hurling verbal abuse at me every day. On top of that, he took control of our finances, skimping on household expenses. He would complain at every meal I cooked, even though he asked me to make them. Up, I declared divorce to Tom and left the house. Then one day, I ran into Mike by chance. Sirs, time! I heard you're on welfare now. I was taken aback. What? You must be mistaking me for someone else. He smirked. Come on, don't try to pretend. Mike twisted his mouth into a sneer. Listen, you and I are done. Don't come crying to me about being broke, cause I'm not lending you a dime. But remember that? Before I could retort, he had vanished into the crowd. Feeling the stares of passers-by, I hung my head and shook my shoulders. I couldn't help but laugh. It's a poor thing. He doesn't know anything. I can't wait to see his reaction when he finds out the truth. And I'm Susan, a 50-year-old housewife. I married Tom 5 years ago. When we first met, he seemed like a perfect gentleman. We met at a gathering of mutual acquaintances, and he was fun to talk to, very friendly, and seemed really nice. As we were parting, he said, I'd like to meet just the two of us next time. I was feeling sad about saying goodbye, so I agreed. When we started dating, I learned he had a son named Mike from his previous marriage. Mike was in 5th grade then, and I had dinner with him a few times. He was a bright and nice kid just like his father. A year later, proposed to me, and I decided to open up to him. I work part-time and live with my parents, right? Actually, the company I joined right out of college was a nightmare and it wrecked my health. Is that so? He said. It was tough even quitting. I don't think I can work long hours anymore. Then Tom smiled kindly. Just stay at home without overdoing it. Look, I work for a big corporation. I'll work for both of us, no worries. Illustrated by his words, I accepted his proposal. I truly thought I had found a good man and looked forward to a happy married life. Little did I know, in less than 6 months, I'd face utter despair, as we got used to living as a family of 3. Tom and Mike's behavior took a drastic turn. They started criticizing and mocking everything I said or did. Mom's bedridden again. What about my lunch? One morning, Mike came to my bedroom, frowning in displeasure. I'd fallen ill after participating in a community event at a local church the day before. It was an unseasonably hot day, and I wasn't feeling well, so I had asked Tom to help, but he refused with an annoyed look. It must be nice to be a stay-at-home mom. You can slack off all year. It's my rare day off, let me rest. I understand. Pushing myself to attend had resulted in being unable to get up the next morning. I'm sorry, Mike. I couldn't prepare your lunch, so please buy something from Walmart. As I handed him the money, Mike grumbled discontentedly. Mom, can't you at least make a decent lunch? You're always taking shortcuts with frozen stuff or leftovers from dinner. His words stung me deeply. Don't blame your mom. Mike. Tom chimed in, passing by in the hallway with a half smirk. With the effort she's saving on lunch. I bet dinner's gonna be extravagant. All right. Should I expect something fancy like roast beef or maybe crab and salmon roe shipped directly from Maine? I'm looking forward to it. As a full-time housewife, you've got plenty of time to spare for dinner, right? You're not sleeping all afternoon. I hope. And make sure to do the house cleaning thoroughly, no slacking off. Both of them chuckled at my exhausted state, threw out their unreasonable lines, and left. There's no way I can prepare such a luxurious meal. Lying in bed, I stared at the ceiling and let out a heavy sigh. The reason is simple. Tom is incredibly stingy. Despite being a department head in a major corporation and earning a substantial salary, the allowance he gives me is ridiculously meager. It's my salary, so why should I let my wife manage it? He argued after we got married. I didn't oppose him, quietly complying. I believed that as long as the household finances were managed properly, it didn't matter who was in charge. Then, Tom started spending money recklessly. Social drinking. Drinking is a business expense. It's essential. While he splurges on expensive clothes and watches for himself, he makes a fuss even if I spend $1 on a snack. Insisting that a housewife doesn't need pocket money, I have to report to Tom and get permission for every expense, whether it's a trip to the salon or buying clothes. One pair of jeans should be enough, right? You're buying another one. I need a warm one for winter. Fine, but buy it cheap. And I want to get a haircut. Can I go to the salon every 2 months to maintain my hairstyle? Then, what's the point of you dressing up? Keep your long hair as it is, then you only need a haircut every 6 months. I won't allow it. So, I'm only allowed to buy cheap makeup from dollar stores. Even when I plead to change to better products because my skin is getting rough, he doesn't listen. Furthermore, the household budget he gives me is 1/3 of the average. No wonder our nutrition is unbalanced. When I complained, Tom just shrugged it off. They managed with this amount on that TV budgeting show. But that lady's family owned a farm, and she got vegetables and rice from them. It's impossible with the high cost of living here. Managing that is your job, isn't it? I was frustrated not just by his stinginess with the household budget, but also by his attitude towards my father's funeral contribution. When my father, who had been ill, passed away, Tom blatantly showed his reluctance. We don't need to give a funeral contribution, right? Anyone attending the funeral, other than the immediate family, gives a contribution. Then use your savings. I'm not involved. He said this to me, tear-streaked in preparing for the funeral in my mourning clothes. His complete lack of consideration for me infuriated me. I don't intend to ask for your contribution, so don't worry. Good. But wait, do Mike and I really have to go? It's going to ruin our long weekend. Such a drag. Really, Dad? I was planning to play a new video game. Though they complained, I never doubted they would attend. However, when Tom and Mike finally showed up late, they didn't greet my mother or relatives. My exhausted mother didn't have the energy to criticize them, but my relatives were furious. What's Tom thinking? It's too cold-hearted for his father-in-law's funeral. And Mike, after receiving so many gifts and money from your father. I apologized profusely to my relatives, feeling my affection for them rapidly cooling. Tom, in his stylish suits, and Mike, attending a prestigious private university, were popular in the neighborhood as a handsome father. As a handsome father-son duo, they did nothing but spew verbal abuse at me. Instead of coming straight home after work or school, they'd wander around, returning with the scent of lipstick and perfume. While they did whatever they pleased, they treated me like a maid, demanding luxurious meals despite the meager food budget. Recently, when I served dishes made with chicken or pork, Mike and Tom would glare at me disdainfully and lash out. Don't you want to serve a good meal to a husband who's been working all day? If I get sick eating this poor man's food, how are you going to take responsibility? Tell yourself a mother. I can make tasty meals even with chicken or pork. And if you're picky about eating vegetables and fish, you'll end up ruining your health. We're saying we'd eat it if it was high-end seafood. Stop yapping if you can't satisfy us with your cooking. I don't need to be lectured by you. They used to eat despite complaining, but recently they've started leaving food untouched. Yet, if I don't cook, they berate me for slacking off as a wife. It's such a waste, so I end up eating it for breakfast or lunch the next day, wondering whom I'm cooking for as tears well up in my eyes. As for their meals, they get by with store-bought lunches, ramen noodles, and snack foods. The chilling queries: Tom was diagnosed as pre-diabetic during a company health check, and Mike started gaining weight. It was a predictable outcome. Then, they lashed out at me. How dare you, as a wife, make your husband and son sick? We don't need a useless woman like you. Let's get a divorce. Except right now, I'll leave. I agreed readily, which took them by surprise. Thumbs. Are you okay with that, being jobless? You've been living off me. How will you survive now? Don't worry about me. I'll sign the divorce papers later and send them to you. Just leave my stuff until the movers come to pick it up. Nobody's gonna take your junk, Tom sneered. Ah, you'll regret leaving a handsome, high-earning guy like me. Yet you won't find another kind husband who'd let you be a housewife with 3 meals and naps. Wait, you've been living in luxury off Dad's money. You'll struggle now. Willie packed my clothes in a suitcase. Tom and Mike kept ranting. I envied how highly Tom thought of himself. During our dating days, this overconfidence seemed shining and confident. You're going back to your mom's, right? Say hi to her on her pension. You two will be living the poor life. Hey, Mike. I bet they'll end up on welfare. Tom's prediction made Mike laugh out loud. You already reek of poverty. Combined with Grandma, they'll be the ultimate pair. Since the recent funeral was so stingy, it felt like poverty was seeping in. I thought the same. I'll call it a family funeral or a poor man's funeral. I want it a grand event. Mike, got it. Dad, but for us, poverty's like a different world with Dad in a major corporation and me at a prestigious university. I was boiling with anger at their audacity, but realized it was pointless to react and let it all slide. Returning home, I confided in my mom, who lowered her voice. I sensed something was off with Tom and Mike at the funeral, but I didn't want to intrude too much into my daughter's family. Plus, with your father's illness, I know you couldn't speak up. I'm sorry for suddenly showing up. It's fine. I've been lonely without someone to talk to. Why don't you stay here? Thanks, but once I get my job on track, I'm planning to move to an apartment. Well, I appreciated my mom's concern. Living together might make me too dependent. Living nearby and visiting occasionally seemed like balance. Tom and Mike mocked me for being jobless, but in reality, I've been working from home. It all started with my budget cooking blog. Receiving many positive comments, I boldly launched a cooking website, which quickly gained a readership and became popular online. Then, an editor from a major publishing house approached me, and now I'm slowly preparing to publish a cookbook. Thanks to this, I've been too busy to dwell on the divorce, and days flew by. One day, my phone rang incessantly, pausing from stir-frying ingredients. I answered, "Hello." "Hey, what's this about alimony?" I sighed, expecting this topic. "You and Mike hurled enough abuse at me, didn't you?" "Oh," I thought, "never mind." Just relief in his voice. Tom abruptly continued, "I haven't cheated on you or anything." "Hey, wait, did you record our verbal abuse? Your memory alone won't cut it. I've noted everything in a journal in detail. By filing for alimony then. Poor people always talk about money. Let's see if you can actually get it." Tom snapped and hung up the phone. After finishing cooking, I went to a private investigator and requested an investigation into Tom's behavior. Soon, his affair with a coworker was uncovered. The day after I sent photos and the investigation report to his company, Tom called me again. "You're so low exposing it to my company." My Fury's manager reported it to the higher-ups, and now I'm fired. "Oh, wasn't the woman his daughter? You should have known better than to have an affair, given how strict they are about such matters." I chuckled, "But you must be fine, right? You so stingy with living expenses, you must have plenty of savings. I bet you and Mike are living it up." Mike moved into a dorm for his college this spring. This spring, because commuting was tough. Damn, with the prepaid dorm fees and the mortgage, it's a lot. My savings got drained by that woman. She was two-timing me with a younger guy. Sounds tough, but that's none of my business. Oh, and about my alimony plus half the value of the apartment for property division. Please transfer it to my account once the claim arrives. Tom was ranting over the phone, but I hung up without bothering. A few days later, while returning from shopping downtown, I bumped into Mike, dressed in flashy fashion with multiple piercings and blonde hair. He was noticeable from afar. Spotting me, he raised his hand in greeting. Hey, I heard you're on welfare now. I was surprised. What? You're mistaking me for someone else. Don't pretend, Mike said with a twisted smile. Any jobless old lady like you would end up there. If you had just obeyed Dad and me, you could still be living comfortably. It's pathetic. I retorted, receiving welfare is a citizen's right. We could all need it someday due to illness or accidents. It's wrong to look down on it. So you're getting it too, huh? Ignoring his smirk, Mike pointed his finger at me. Listen, you and I are done. Don't come begging to me. I won't lend you a penny. Remember that. Just as I was about to retort, he turned his back and disappeared into the crowd. I bowed my head and trembled my shoulders, feeling the stares of passers-by. I couldn't help it. The situation was too absurd and I couldn't suppress my laughter. Or poor thing, he knows nothing. I'm curious to see his reaction when he finds out the truth. A few days later, waking up, I found a ridiculous number of missed calls from Mike. Reluctantly calling back, he yelled furiously, "She tricked me? What are you talking about? I heard from my cousin. You got 3 luxury condos from Grandpa's inheritance and are living comfortably. Hiding that during the divorce is low. My personal assets, why should I tell you or Tom? It's marital property. You should have divided it with Dad. Too bad, it became mine after the divorce proceedings. So I can't give it to Tom. I had known it was mine by my father's will, but I delayed the proceedings to avoid sharing with Tom." Meek then raged. "You're rich and still getting welfare. I'm reporting you to the authorities right now. Feel free." "The one getting it is Tom, though." Mike fell silent. "Why?" "I told you, it's not me. Are you listening?" I explained it like talking to a child. To be honest, even without the inheritance, I can live well. I have income from my cooking website and book sales, which I started secretly. But Tom spent all his money on his affair and his many debts. After being fired, he has no income. "Mike, are you there?" "That's on welfare." "No way." I pulled the phone away from my ear as Mike screamed, just waiting for him to calm down. I continued the conversation. "You really haven't heard, have you?" Gun's too proud to tell his son. A relative who Tom asked for money told me that he was evicted for not paying his apartment rent, and now he's unemployed, holed up in a rundown apartment. If you're worried, why don't you reach out to him? For a while, there was silence on the other end of the phone. After a few minutes, Mike spoke resentfully. "You're cold. After all Dad did for you, don't you feel any gratitude? You have money. You should give it to him. Why should I? Ever since we got married, it's been nothing but unpleasant. I don't feel indebted to him. If you're so concerned, why don't you lend him money? You have a job. I don't have any savings, but the money from my job, well, it goes to hanging out with friends." Mike's tone faltered, and I smirked. "You've been partying quite lavishly. As a student, you shouldn't be borrowing money to go to clubs. How did you know that? I saw you across the street the other day, right after we parted. You met up with a club hostess and went into a luxury store. Plus, I found a club membership card at home, and using my credit card without permission is out of the question." Mike stumbled over his words, trembling. "It's unfair. You got all those fancy condos from Grandpa and Dad and I got nothing. This is discrimination." Okay. The bill for the credit card is coming soon, so make sure you pay it." The call ended before I finished speaking. I sighed and ended the call as well. I thought it was over, but a few months later, Tom and Mike showed up unannounced at my parents' house. When the doorbell rang persistently, I answered the intercom to find them there, expecting they had come to borrow money. I let them into the house to avoid causing a scene outside. Actors, Tom and Mike's appearance had drastically changed from their once stylish looks to worn shirts and dirty pants. Their eyes lacked vitality, and they looked haggard, yet they still had the energy to be sarcastic. Upon entering the living room, Tom looked around and sneered. "Same old shabby house. Why don't you sell those condos and rebuild this place? Do something nice for your mother living on a meager pension? This is the house of Dad's memories, so it's fine as is. More importantly, when are you two going to pay back the money? You passed the deadline?" Tom lifted his chin and arrogantly proposed. "Susan, I'll forgive you now, so let's remodel." "What? You started a cooking site, right? If you can handle the housework perfectly, I'll even let you work. So come back, being kind enough to forgive a wife who abandoned her husband and child. Dad's generous. So, Mom, why don't you with Dad again?" It must be insecure for two women living alone. I was speechless. Then rage surged within me. Don't you dare mock me? How much more do you need to ridicule me before you're satisfied? I yelled, my anger erupting at Tom and Mike, who widened their eyes in shock. After treating me like a housemaid, hurling abuse at me, and not giving me enough for living expenses, you now want me back because I inherited the condos? That's absurd. What, you plan to abandon us? Rich people really are stingy. Knowing we're struggling for money, yet still demanding payment. You're heartless. You were poor just a while ago. Don't get too full of yourself. As we were arguing, my mother returned from shopping, fixed dialing. Tom and Mike started fawning over her. Please lend us some money. We'll probably pay it back. And isn't it unfair that only Susan got her dad's inheritance? Give me one of those condos too. Grandma, long time no see. How have you been? Please persuade Mom to remarry Dad. He doesn't want a divorce. But Mom's being stubborn, surprised by Tom and Mike's sudden flattery. My mother's expression changed after hearing their words. She put down her shopping bag on the refrigerator's floor and took a deep breath. So shameless, both of you. What do you mean, learn some shame? She exclaimed loudly. Tom and Mike were taken aback, understandably confused. As my mother usually spoke softly, she glared sharply at them and sternly said, I've heard everything about the divorce from Susan. How dare you show up here like this? So come on, Susan's exaggerating. You should hear her sorry. Yeah. Grandma, Mom tends to lie quite a bit. I remember very well how you both behaved at my husband's funeral. My mother interrupted, continuing in a stern tone, you arrived late, didn't greet me, or the relatives, and just yawned throughout the service. You left before the coffin was sent off. After behaving like that, you have the nerve to ask for his inheritance? She drove Tom and Mike to the entrance, glaring fiercely at them. We're strangers now. Don't you ever come here again? If you do, I'll call the police. She pushed them out, still in their socks, threw their shoes at their feet, and locked the door immediately. Tom, who had been reluctant to pay me, eventually transferred the money to my account, advised by his lawyer that a lawsuit would cost even more. However, since he hadn't found a job since being fired, his parents had to cover for him after hearing about his situation from relatives. They visited my parents' home, apologizing for the trouble Tom caused. After giving up on finding a new job, Tom returned to his hometown under the pretext of helping out with his family's farm. However, the reason for his divorce became common knowledge throughout the village, and people from little kids to the elderly would point and laugh at him while he helped in his parents' fields. Ah, there's stingy Uncle Tom. Even with a degree from a prestigious university and a job at a big corporation, he's no good if his wife leaves him because he's so rotten. The reason for his previous divorce was also his reckless spending. He'll never change. Being ridiculed by the folks in town is infuriating. To marry to show them up. I got so fed up with these persistent messages that I blocked Tom's contact. His affair partner had already dumped him, as it seems the end of money meant the end of their relationship. I tracked down this affair partner using a private investigator and made sure they paid alimony properly. As for Mike, I made him reimburse the money he had recklessly spent using my credit card. Although he was enrolled in a prestigious university and was on track to follow in his father's footsteps as an elite, his constant skipping of classes to hang out led to him dropping too many credits and being expelled. His friends and girlfriends were concerned, but Mike's arrogant comments out of sheer bravado led to everyone turning their backs on him. Then, there was a huge fight with Tom, who said, "You're my son and you won't even help pay off my debts." No, they're apparently estranged. Mike lives alone in a small apartment, making ends meet with part-time jobs. Being able to freely buy things and having to cut down on living expenses, despite having an income. He's subjected to daily sarcasm. But that's all in the past now, and I feel refreshed. As my cooking website is doing well, and I'm about to publish a book. I've moved to the top floor of a high-rise condo, which is part of my father's inheritance. My mom is still healthy, but she's already 73. The high-rise is close to my childhood home, so it's perfect for quickly getting to my mom if anything happens. I'm planning a surprise spa trip for her upcoming birthday. Though my marriage was a failure, I want to continue to have a good relationship with my mom. I never thought of you as my mother. You just wanted to hog all of Dad's inheritance for yourself. In the midst of her wedding reception, my daughter suddenly shouted this at me. The room buzzed with whispers, and all eyes turned to me in an instant. Everyone looked confused about what was happening, but I was the most bewildered of all. Here I was at my beloved daughter's wedding, determined to proudly witness her special day for both myself and her late father. Then suddenly, this outburst. What does she mean by me hogging the inheritance? And why bring this up now on your once-in-a-lifetime big day? My mind was filled with questions. But my daughter, now completely overcome with anger, continued to hurl insults and accusations at me, eventually kicking me out of the venue. As I left, I offered her one last piece of advice as a parent. Whatever happens, life's strong. She'll understand the meaning of those words someday. I'm Karen. I'm a stay-at-home mom, living with my husband, his daughter from a previous marriage, and our son. I met my husband over 20 years ago, at work, where we fell in love. Karen, that presentation was amazing. Thank you. I wasn't very confident, but it's nice to hear you say that. We encouraged and supported each other as colleagues, and our relationship blossomed into romance. My husband, recently divorced, was raising his baby daughter on his own. Looking back, it must have been a tough time for him, both physically and emotionally, but he never showed it. He was always smiling, kind, and a great support as a coworker. About a year after we started working together, he said to me over dinner at a restaurant, "You know, I'm actually thinking of starting my own business. There are a few companies that have expressed interest in working with me. Wow, that's incredible. You're so talented. I'm totally behind you. Thanks. So this may be a bit much to ask, but if it's possible, what's up? I'm gonna make this company a success. I promise you. I won't let us go through any unnecessary hardship. But I need a little support. I want to be there for you, and Karen, not just at work, but in our personal lives too." "Oh, what do you mean by that?" "I will make you happy. I swear. Will you marry me? I know it's a lot to ask." That's how he proposed to me, but I didn't hesitate. I'd be honored. Without any doubt, that's how I responded. And so we got married. Our wedding was small, but we enjoyed it. With our family and friends. Everyone congratulated us with smiles, and it's a day I remember like it was yesterday. It was a truly beautiful ceremony that I'll always cherish. That's how our married life started. It was more challenging than I had braced myself for. After all, I became a mother overnight. His daughter became my daughter. Raising a child for the first time was really tough. She cried a lot, and so did I. But I decided not to yell or rush, just to watch over her patiently. I took it one step at a time, learning along the way. I somehow managed to raise her that way. She was adorable. Her round eyes, chubby cheeks, high-pitched voice. Her smile as she grew older, the way she ran to me, calling me mom, all of it, was just so precious. I had been anxious about suddenly becoming a mother before we married. I worried about whether I could love his child. But those worries were unnecessary. In fact, I was too busy to even think about them. My husband, too, was swamped after starting his business. Despite having people willing to work and collaborate with him, being a new CEO was tough. There were so many firsts for him, and he was always running around, confused. I remember him apologizing on the phone for almost 10 minutes straight once. I helped with organizing paperwork and such, but I know it was really hard for him. Still, he found time to take care of our daughter and show concern for me. He was a great father and husband. 3 years flew by in a blink. His business finally started to stabilize. It had grown quite a bit from the beginning. His promise of not letting us suffer was finally becoming a reality. And then our son was born. He was a younger brother to our daughter. After he was born, I tried my best to treat both my daughter and son equally. Blood didn't matter. They were both my precious children. My daughter doted on her younger brother. She played with him and was a great big sister. He was really attached to her. Fetching them together was heartwarming. Like any family, we had our small troubles. But I think we managed to live quite peacefully and happily. The time passed quickly, and before I knew it, my daughter was 26 and my son was 22. Then, suddenly, something terrible happened. I was relaxing at home one day when I got a phone call. "Hello." Oh, what? It was unbelievable news. I didn't want to believe it, but my husband at work. He was rushed to the hospital, but despite the doctor's best efforts, he didn't make it. It was a stroke. He had been fine until the day before. Everything was normal. It was such a sudden and unexpected goodbye. Tigyu? Why, how could this happen? As I looked at my husband's face lying in the coffin, he seemed peaceful, showing no sign of the pain he must have felt. It looked like he was just sleeping, which made it all the more heartbreaking. I couldn't even say goodbye, and the pain was so great that I couldn't cry. Still, somehow, I managed to pull myself together and handled the funeral arrangements. Our son, who always tried to act tough, clearly loved his father dearly. The image of him, head bowed and tears flowing, is still vivid in my memory. But there was something off about my daughter. It's normal to be upset at your father's death, but this felt different. She didn't shed a tear or speak a word to me. She would help with funeral preparations if asked, but something was just not right. At that time, I was too overwhelmed and interpreted her behavior as her own way of expressing grief. Despite everything, I managed to say my farewells to my husband in my own way. Gradually, I started going back to work and returning to normal life. A few months later, my daughter's wedding took place. After graduating from college, she had started living with her boyfriend without getting a job, essentially becoming a housewife. Now she is finally getting married. The wedding, planned before my husband passed away, was something he had looked forward to, especially walking down the aisle with our daughter. My husband was determined to watch our daughter's wedding without shedding a tear. He was really psyched up about it. I remember how he joked about it, saying things like, "That's still a long way off," as if it was just yesterday. Thinking about it almost made me feel down again. I couldn't let myself look sad at my beloved daughter's wedding. I was carrying a photo of my husband. I dressed up for the first time in a long while, along with my son, who was also dressed up, and we attended the wedding. When we left home that morning, I looked up at the sky and said, "You're watching from up there, aren't you?" and headed to the wedding with a smile. I intended to wholeheartedly celebrate my daughter and her husband at that moment. The wedding was held in a grand and lively venue. The food was delicious, and all the guests seemed very happy. My daughter's husband was a classmate she met in a club during college. They had been dating for about 3 years, a fact I was aware of. However, since she had never brought him home or talked much about him, I was a bit surprised when the wedding plans were announced. I had my doubts about him, but his promise to make my daughter happy was convincing enough for me to believe in him. He was smiling happily at the front of the venue. Above all, my daughter, in her stunningly beautiful white wedding dress, looked indescribably gorgeous. Gorgeous. I thought of how much my husband would have wanted to see her like this, and tears welled up in my eyes again. I had been crying from the beginning of the day, so when the time came for the family message and she shouted, "This woman hogged all of my father's inheritance," I was in disbelief. It took me a moment to realize those harsh words were directed at me. I was so overwhelmed by the sudden shift from joy to shock that I couldn't understand what was happening. Why had things turned out like this? I thought my relationship with my daughter had been normal, like any parent and child. She became rebellious during her teenage years, but I thought that was typical for that age. Looking back, I realized that she started distancing herself from me around the time she began dating her future husband in college. But I thought that was just her growing up, and I was happy for her. Since her father wasn't there, I walked the aisle with her. Even then, she seemed unsatisfied, as if she had something to say. I assumed she was just disappointed that her father couldn't be there. Was all this actually stemming from some deep-seated resentment towards me? I never thought I was a perfect mother, but I never imagined my daughter would say such things at her wedding. Why bring up the inheritance out of the blue? Even after that, my daughter, her face red with anger, kept hurling accusations at me. "Dad loved me the most, more than you and my brother. He despised your greedy nature." He never said it out loud, but I knew it. My daughter spat out these words rapidly, not giving me a chance to respond, and continued to shower me with insults and accusations. She claimed that, while I doted on my biological son, I never showed her the same affection, and that she had been discriminated against. She said she lived a miserable life from a young age, barely getting any allowance and unable to do what she wanted. Moreover, she accused me of being a cruel woman for not crying at my husband's funeral and suggested that it was my fault that he had a stroke because I didn't pay attention to his diet. Finally, she even called me an evil person, not a mother at all. My daughter was playing the victim. I couldn't believe the barrage of hurtful words thrown at me. I could see the shocked expression on my son's face at the same table. Her claims were baseless, and I wanted to argue back against the delusion she was expressing, but the content didn't matter to me anymore. I was just immensely shocked that my daughter thought of me this way. Next to her, I saw her husband nodding tearfully in agreement with everything she said. I could also see my husband's smiling face in a photograph. Whispers from the guests inadvertently reached my ears. They were all looking at me. I could hear words of sympathy from my daughter, and at the same time, words of blame directed at me. But there were also voices saying they couldn't believe I would do such things, wondering what had gotten into my daughter. The staff of the venue, disturbed by the sudden commotion, rushed over to try to stop my daughter and calm the guests. Only, the atmosphere of celebration had completely disappeared. Letting my daughter show such hostility towards me, I wondered if she really was the daughter I had raised. Was this some kind of prank? No, such an unpleasant prank couldn't exist. That must be reality. Was my daughter misunderstanding something? Or had she been brainwashed? These desperate thoughts crossed my mind, but when I saw my daughter relishing in my sorrow, I knew something had ended inside me. Finally, she marched up to me from the main table, pointed her finger at me, and loudly declared she was cutting ties with me. I had no energy left to argue back. I felt drained, wondering what all the days of treating her as family had been for. I decided to say one last thing to her as a parent. Reinstored. Whatever happens, keep going strong. But with a triumphant look, my daughter turned her back on me, and I walked away alone, heavy-hearted. Soon, I heard footsteps hurrying after me. It was my son. Is it okay? Just letting sis say all that? As far as I've seen, neither you nor Dad ever treated us differently. My usually gentle son was unusually angry. Yes, I know. Honestly, it was quite a shock. But it's her choice, so we have to accept it. But this is just... My son, overwhelmed with anger, seemed on the verge of tears. It's okay. We should respect her wishes. She has her life, and we have ours. Comforting my son, we headed home together. Today's events were a hard pill to swallow, but I had things I needed to do given the situation. I had to let my daughter know the reality of things. Just a few days after the declaration of disownment, it happened early one morning. I was awakened by the incessant ringing of the doorbell. The sound was annoying, but I checked the monitor. As expected, it showed who I thought it would. As soon as I opened the door, my daughter burst in frantic. Mom, what's going on? My husband lost his job. He was working so hard, why? You didn't know, did you? Know what? Let me explain everything. Out of a final act of kindness, I decided to tell my daughter everything. Her husband had been working at the company my husband, and I ran since they were dating. He met my daughter in a college club and joined our company as a part-time worker through her recommendation. After graduating, he continued working as a contract employee. How's your daughter's boyfriend doing at work? Well, honestly, he's struggling a bit. We've tried different coaching methods, but my daughter's husband was utterly incompetent at his job. Looking back, my husband and I might have been too lenient, but he was our daughter's boyfriend, so we gave him special attention. Especially my husband, who seriously considered how to make him more efficient at work and even tried to improve the training methods for him. However, no matter what, my daughter's husband just couldn't produce results. What's worse, his work attitude was poor. He showed no respect to my husband, the president of the company. He was often late and would click his tongue in disapproval if something didn't suit him. Still, my husband believed in him, saying, he's the man our daughter chose, so surely, and continued to support them both wholeheartedly. Honestly, I was increasingly frustrated with my daughter's husband, who showed no intention of meeting my husband's expectations. But I held my tongue, respecting my husband's wishes. Then my husband passed away. Our company was run with my husband as the president and me as the vice president. We both had a complete understanding of each other's job roles, so there were no issues in taking over after his death. When a few days after the funeral, I was officially appointed as the president with the board's approval. Given my daughter's husband's persistent poor work attitude and her unilateral declaration of cutting ties, there was no longer any reason to keep employing him. There were already complaints from other employees. I decided to fire him. No, that's a lie. My daughter screamed in disbelief. He always said everything was going great at work, that he had the support of his superiors and subordinates, and that he might even get a fast promotion. I was counting on him. Although I knew it, this confirmed that my daughter's husband was just that sort of man. My daughter was completely deceived by him, and I was astounded by her naivety. She continued, confessing that she thought her husband was competent and could survive in the company without my help, that he would earn a high salary. So even if she cut ties with me, he could still stay at the company. That's why she declared her disownment. I listened in silence, dumbfounded by her audacity. Having lived with her for years, I felt stupid for not seeing through her, but she clearly didn't understand the kind of person I was. She really underestimated me. I was not just my husband's wife. I was a co-owner and executive. An executive of that company. Did she not even consider that? After venting her anger, My daughter's expression changed to one of pleading. Hey, let's forget about the disownment. You don't want to lose your dear daughter, right? So, can you reconsider firing my husband? I couldn't help but let out a dry laugh at her sudden change of heart. My dear daughter, weren't you the one who accused me of being a terrible parent in front of everyone just a few days ago? I reiterated that I couldn't reverse the decision to fire her husband. His position had already been filled by someone else, as my son, who's about to graduate from a top university, had insisted on joining our company even after turning down offers from major corporations. Masterminds, I want to support you. I'll work hard. Please let me join, he had said. So, I decided to fill the vacant position with him. At this, my daughter accused me again, claiming I favored my real child over her and that I didn't love her. I calmly replied, this isn't about favoritism, it's about business. Between someone who showed enthusiasm to work here despite other offers and someone who never utilized the chances given, the choice is clear for a business owner. Just then, my son walked in yawning, having heard the commotion. Hey, you're on my side, right? Help me convince Mom to take back the decision about my husband's job. My daughter desperately pleaded her brother. But his reaction was not what she expected. Who are you? You're no longer a child of this family, right? A stranger like you should leave. This is trespassing. Upon recognizing my daughter, my son's expression changed instantly. The sleepiness in his eyes vanished, replaced by a cold stare directed at her. But after all, I played with you when you were kids, didn't I? She said. That's all in the past, isn't it? What are you doing now? He retorted. My daughter seemed stunned for a moment, perhaps expecting her brother to take her side. However, as we remained silent, she eventually realized this was no longer her place. With a resin look, she trudged out of the house. Are you okay with this? She's disowned me, but she's still your sister. I asked him. When I asked him that, my son replied clearly, What are you talking about? She's not my sister. I don't want a family who treats you like a convenient tool, he replied firmly. I felt a bit relieved to hear my son speak so clearly. Later, he inquired about what happened to my daughter and her husband. He thought I might be worried about her and asked around. According to what he heard, my daughter's husband initially approached her because her parents were company executives. Very mean. Marry her meant having a father-in-law as the company president. Even if he was incompetent or had a bad attitude, he believed a certain status and salary would be guaranteed, and he might even become the president himself someday. Such naivety. In a corporate structure, such nepotism doesn't work. But that's what he believed. When he suddenly got fired, it led to a huge fight with my daughter. It's all your fault for disowning your mother that I got fired. What? It's your fault for being brainless. You're just a leech living off your parents. They engaged in a nasty blame game. Eventually, my daughter's husband decided she was of no use to him, declaring he never loved her, and left a signed divorce paper before disappearing. My daughter, perhaps still holding on to hope, searched for him extensively but hasn't found him yet. Whether they could reconcile even if they did meet is doubtful. Apparently, there were sightings of my daughter's husband in a busy area in front of a train station in another state. He was seen trying to pick up a woman, carrying a designer bag, and failing miserably. He was wearing ragged clothes and didn't look like he was living an easy life. The commotion at the wedding, whether true or not, seemed to be enough to alienate her friends, leaving her with no one to rely on after being abandoned by her husband, but be completely alone. She had to continue her daily life. Finding herself at a dead end, she had to take on her very first part-time job. It was the same kind of supermarket job she had once looked down upon as menial. However, having never worked before, she was naive at the ways of the world. She struggled, bullied by the senior staff for her lack of skills and poor work ethic. Her life wasn't easy, and she couldn't even enjoy her beloved fashion anymore. While complaining about everything, she was being toughened up by the harsh realities of society. As I told her at the wedding, I hope she continues to strive, no matter what. She's still young, and has the potential to change her life with her own efforts. As for me, after my husband's passing, I reorganized some parts of our business and started a new venture. Something my husband had always wanted to do. I hope to eventually pass this business on to my son, who's still a new employee. Not showing him any favoritism, he's working as hard as any other staff member. I'm committed to growing the company my husband. And I started, as a way of making up for not being able to build a good relationship with my daughter. I'm giving you, a defective person, who can't even have kids a chance to gain parenting experience. Be grateful. My husband said astonishingly, walking out of the house, exit the house cheerfully with Ashley. I sat there, disappointed in my husband who prioritized Ashley over me, his wife listening to the sound of Ashley's kids wreaking havoc inside our home, despite my husband's persistent preference for his ex-girlfriend. I had hoped and endured, believing he would eventually understand. But I had reached my limit and decided to contact someone. My name is Katie, 31 years old. I met my husband, Jack, through a matchmaking party, and we've been married for 3 years. Looking from home, I rarely had opportunities to meet new people and felt the pressure as my friends got married one after the other. Being an only child, I was also eager to give my parents grandchildren. That's why I chose to go to the party where I met Jack, who shared my values. We married shortly after dating as he too felt the pressure of being unmarried. We had no problem staying together, so we got married soon after we met. I thought it was a good decision at the time. However, our inability to conceive soon became a source of distress. 2 years passed without a child, and Jack grew discontent, blaming me for our infertility. Yet medical tests showed no issues on my part. Despite his harsh words, the test results gave me hope that together we could overcome this. But Jack refused to visit the clinic with me, blaming me alone. "Hey, don't you want a baby? Let's get checked together." I suggested even undergoing fertility treatments in my eagerness for a child. However, when it comes to children, I absolutely need his cooperation. I kept pleading with Jack to take this seriously. "Why should I go to a clinic? It's your fault, you infertile woman." But my husband just made fun of me and refused to cooperate, blaming me for our childlessness. Until now, even if my husband complained, I'd hoped he was just anxious about not having kids. But his lack of understanding shocked me. Nonetheless, I continued to try to persuade him. I believed that someday he would understand one day. Dan, Jack was transferred and we moved in April. He wanted to live in his hometown, and since I could work from anywhere, I didn't object. Our new rented house, larger than the last, allowed me a dedicated workspace which delighted me. I thought I could concentrate on work, though close to his parents yet maintaining a healthy distance. Our relationship with them was good. The place seemed more comfortable than I expected, so the new environment seemed promising. After organizing our belongings, we went shopping to get accustomed to our new life. As Jack showed me around, we walked around the store. I noticed some kids, likely siblings. They were running around the store so fast that I thought it was dangerous. But I was able to finish my shopping without incident. Exiting the store, I heard a woman calling Jack's name. She was pushing a stroller, a stranger to me, but Jack greeted her with a joyous smile. "Ashley, it's been so long. Since high school. How have you been?" I was surprised because my husband was so friendly. I thought they were friends, but not recalling her from his friends at our wedding. Curious, I asked Jack about her. "You two seem close." "A friend? Oh, she's my ex-girlfriend from high school," he said cheerfully, leaving me speechless. I couldn't have expected him to happily tell me that she was his ex-girlfriend, and I was taken aback, unaware of my shock. Ashley spoke to me. "You're Jack's wife?" I was his junior in high school and his ex-girlfriend. I totally flashed wet sates. I didn't know how to respond. Listening to their conversation, I learned Ashley had married right after high school, had kids. She's now a single mother, helped by her parents. "It's really busy with 5 kids. As imposing as Ashley? You don't have to be so harsh. That's mean." Contrary to my natural objection, Ashley played the victim, tears in her eyes. "Once with you, Teddy, Ashley's doing her best alone, and you won't even help." Seeing Ashley like that, Beck scolded me, comforting her. Seeing this, I feared our new life, which I had been looking forward to, would become a nightmare. And true to form, Ashley started bringing her kids over without any hesitation. At first, I refused to let them in, turning them away at the doorstep. But the kids caused trouble outside, disturbing the neighbors. Apparently, Ashley hardly disciplined them, leaving them to run wild like animals. I managed to keep them out, knowing they'd wreak havoc inside. Full yet, Beck, having heard from Ashley, blamed me for not letting them in, leading to a fight. "I don't want strangers in the house. They'll just make a mess. Don't be so narrow-minded." "That's just mean. Plus, wouldn't it be good for you to get some practice with kids?" Ashley's kids ranged from a 3rd grader to a newborn. Jack argued that taking care of them would be good practice for when we have our own, despite my protests. No matter how much I said I didn't like it, my husband didn't understand no matter how much I explained to him, and in the end, he gave the duplicate key to her. When I discovered her entering our home uninvited, I trembled with fear. As he even gave Ashley the key, we had a huge fight. Despite my efforts, the kids turned the rest of the house upside down while I protected my workspace. They ignored my warnings, running around and knocking things over. Ashley, ever imposing, demanded soft drinks and snacks, and even dinner when Jack came home. It was impossible to prepare meals for so many on short notice. Of course, I refused, but Jack sided with her, forcing me to make arrangements. Ashley didn't contribute to the additional food costs. When I mentioned it to Jack, he just said to cover it ourselves. Ashley's struggling with 5 kids. Don't be stingy. We don't have kids, so it shouldn't be a problem for us. His lack of concern for our finances frustrated me. This is our money. If you're so concerned. Jack, why don't you cover everything? When I suggested Jack pay all Ashley-related expenses, he argued that as his wife, I should help. This led to constant fighting because of Ashley. Nothing more or I heard that Ashley's parents were working to support their grandchildren, so she wasn't as desperate as she let on. She showed little interest in her kids, barely responding when they talked to her. She focused on herself and neglected them. It was probably why her kids were not disciplined and so unruly. The eldest, not even 10, seemed to take care of the younger ones. It was annoying though. I felt sorry for the kids, but I had my own life to lead. I taught them basic rules for being in our house, which calmed things down a bit. But why should I, a total stranger, have to do all this? My work was disrupted, and the extra housework piled up, leaving me furious at Jack and Ashley. It got worse when school let out for summer, and the kids started coming over every day. Ashley was here so often. I wondered if she even worked. They stay at home all day more than ever before, expecting lunch too. I was at my wit's end. Jack was no help, and Ashley just played the victim. It seemed impossible to resolve anything through discussion. I didn't know what to do, so I started to worry. Then one day, Ashley came over again, expecting me to take care of her kids. "'Cause I'm going on a trip for 3 days from today. Please look after my kids," she announced cheerily, carrying her suitcase. "When? For 3 days? That's a problem." I was taken aback by her sudden request, despite her parents being around. Why was she leaving her kids with me? Well, the kids prefer being here. "And while you're at it, please help them with their summer homework and make some memories," she said, completely disregarding my feelings. I was livid and opposed her, but she wouldn't listen. Then, to my surprise, Jack showed up at the door, suitcase in hand, smiling beside Ashley. I was confused, as Jack hadn't mentioned any travel plans. Then he dropped a bombshell. "Well, I'm off on a trip with Ashley." "The kids are your responsibility." "What do you mean?" I was dumbfounded by his announcement. When I confronted him, he arrogantly retorted, "I'm giving you, a defective who can't even have kids, a chance to gain parenting experience. Virgins, be grateful." He seemed to think he was doing this for my benefit. He was basking in his self-righteousness. Then they left, suitcases in hand, leaving me in shock. I quickly contacted Jack, insisting it was impossible and asking why he was traveling. He explained it was to give Ashley, abandoned by her husband, as she was raising 5 kids alone, he suggested a break at a luxury resort. I'd never been taken on a trip by Jack, nor had I been pampered like that. I was speechless with rage, but the sound of the kids wreaking havoc snapped me back to reality. I couldn't survive 3 days like this. Since my trust and hope in Jack were completely gone. I had to seek help, so I reached out to someone. 3 days later, around noon, again Ashley returned, looking happy. But their smiles faded upon seeing me. "Welcome back. Did you enjoy your trip?" I asked cheerfully, contrary to their expectation of a worn-out me. "But where are the kids?" "They're quiet." "Sleeping?" Ashley was flustered, surprised by the absence of the usually noisy kids. "No, they're awake." "Hey, your mom's back from her trip." When I called them, they came to the entrance, calm and quiet, a stark contrast to their previous wild behavior. Ashley was shocked at their transformation into well-behaved children. She was distraught and couldn't believe the change in the children's behavior, because they used polite language and learned manners. "Katie, thank you so much for everything. Come on, Mom, make sure to thank her properly." After being told by her kids to apologize for their past behavior, Ashley became almost hysterical. "Why have my kids changed like this?" "What did you do?" She was upset by the change in her children, who had always been obedient and never defied her before. And she ranted. Jack and Ashley noticed someone emerging from behind the kids and turned pale. Why are my brother and sister here? Jack, never expecting family involvement, asked tremblingly, like a child caught misbehaving. What are you doing not protecting your family? I heard about the situation from Katie and came to help. You're her husband and not helping your wife. My brother-in-law and sister-in-law looked at Jack with a mix of disdain and anger. When Jack and Ashley left for their trip, I realized I couldn't handle all 5 kids alone, so I asked my sister-in-law for help. Knowing she was a childcare worker, I explained the situation and begged for her assistance. She immediately came over to support me. Moreover, she informed my brother-in-law, who also came to help as he was off work. He's a middle school teacher and former athlete, so he's physically strong. It made the kids ecstatic to play with him. Both being experienced with children due to their jobs, they redisciplined the kids in 3 days, turning them into polite and well-mannered children. After hearing my story, they assured me they were on my side and ready to help, comforting me with smiles. I wished I had asked them for help sooner. Why are you relying on my brother and sister? What are you doing? What have you done to my kids? Both Jack and Ashley tried to blame me, but they were silenced by disapproving stares from my brother-in-law, sister-in-law, and even the kids. Jack, having always felt inferior to his more accomplished elder siblings, was visibly uneasy. My sister-in-law scolded him. You're married and yet you're prioritizing an ex-girlfriend. And she cheated on you. She cheated on you in high school, remember? She knew Ashley from high school and disliked her for being a gossip and flattering boys. I was shocked to learn that Ashley's infidelity was the reason for their breakup. I thought they parted amicably or just drifted apart. I never expected that my husband would be on the side of the person who cheated on him. As a man, I can't believe what you're doing. My brother-in-law added, further shrinking Jack. Frustrated, I handed Jack the contact number of a lawyer. I can't do this anymore. Let's get divorced right away. Divorced? Why? Jack was shocked, not expecting this, and his reaction only fueled my anger. Did you think I didn't know anything? I showed him the evidence of his affair with Ashley while they were on the trip. I searched Jack's belongings and computer. I'd suspected infidelity due to his favoritism towards Ashley, but never had proof until now. Therefore, when I took this opportunity to thoroughly investigate my husband's luggage and computer, I was able to easily find evidence of his affair. I found clear evidence, including their trip reservation details left on his computer. I even went to the resort they were staying at and photographed them in the act. I wore a hat and mask, and Jack, oblivious to my presence, was enjoying himself with Ashley, mocking me. It was clear he saw me as nothing more than a convenient housekeeper and source of money. I was filled with anger and sadness, wondering what all the time spent with Jack meant. As I laid out the evidence of his cheating, Jack gradually lost his ability to argue back, realizing the proof of his infidelity and the cold stares from everyone but Ashley. He resignedly agreed to a divorce. Ashley, sensing she was at a disadvantage, perhaps wanting to escape a space with her disliked sister-in-law, urged Jack to leave. Let's get out of this family, she replied, trying to sound tough. Yeah, I don't need Katie anyway. As they attempted to flee with the kids, but they were unable to do so. Ashley's parents appeared at the door. What? Why are you two here? Ashley was surprised, and the kids joyfully ran to their grandparents. Ashley's parents looked tired but angry at her. I had found their contact information while searching for evidence of the affair and had informed them of Ashley's actions in the trip with my husband. They apologized and agreed to help me. You cheated again. You were divorced because of you, haven't you learned? Ashley's mother slapped her in the face. Ashley's father, amidst the chaos, was guiding the children outside, shielding them from the situation. Wait, an affair and divorce? Jack looked at Ashley, confused. Although Ashley had claimed her divorce was her divorce was her husband's fault. The truth was different. Ashley had been unfaithful, and it turned out she had another child, making a total of 6. The oldest was from her marriage, so her ex-husband took custody, but the fathers of the other children were unknown. After the divorce, Ashley, with nowhere else to go, moved back in with her parents. Despite starting work to support their grandchildren, Ashley hadn't changed her ways. She continued to neglect her job, leading a frivolous life, resulting in more children. Occasionally, her simultaneous relationships with multiple partners led to complicated situations, burdening her parents. Frustrated, her parents were already quite stern with her, and Ashley, tired of their scolding, ended up imposing on me at my house. You've been seeing other people besides me. And the youngest isn't mine. Jack, apparently unaware of this, was shocked. The interaction between Jack and Ashley on his computer had started with a message from Ashley a year ago, seeking help. She was abandoned by her husband and is living a difficult life. She portrayed herself as a victim, abandoned by her husband and struggling, deceived by her act and the allure of an old flame. Jack eagerly replied and even made arrangements to meet her. This had happened about 8 months ago, when Jack told me he was going away on a business trip. Later, when Ashley claimed her youngest child was Jack's, he became even more supportive of her. Jack's transfer appeared to be influenced by Ashley's proximity and his desire to be near his supposed child. With no children between us, Jack seemed willing to defend Ashley to be with his own child. However, the timing of Jack's encounter with Ashley and the child's birth did not match. The period between their meeting and the pregnancy was too short for the child to be Jack's. If Jack had taken pregnancy and child-rearing seriously, he would have realized this sooner. I was astounded by Jack's gullibility. Upon realizing he had no children with Ashley, Jack fell into despair and sat down, overwhelmed. He had always wanted children quickly and was deeply affected by this revelation, despite everything being exposed. Ashley still insisted she was the victim, desperately asserting her innocence. Because I'm the victim here. I just want to live a happy life, but because of the alimony, I can't do what I want. Her mother, unable to contain her anger, slapped Ashley, silencing her. The children, returning out of concern, calmly began to admonish their mother. Mom, you're the one at fault. You need to apologize properly. Ashley cut off, caught off guard by her children's words, flushed with anger, but was further reprimanded by her parents, and finally broke down crying. Why do I have to suffer like this? She left, dragged away by her parents, still in tears. The children, full of energy, thanked us for taking care of them and returned home. I was moved by their transformation and admired their growth. Saying goodbye to the well-mannered children, I smiled. My crying husband was taken back to his parents' home by my brother-in-law and sister-in-law. Despite his resistance, my brother-in-law easily subdued and escorted him away. I was grateful to them for their reliable support. Assured, I successfully completed the divorce. Realizing he had been deceived, began pleading for reconciliation, but I refused. His pleas of changing his ways were too late. I knew his affair had affected his company reputation, leading to a lower salary. Why should I be with someone who only saw me as a convenient woman? I informed my brother-in-law and sister-in-law about Jack's attempts to reconcile, and they assured me they would handle it. After that, I never received another email from Jack, giving me peace of mind. Once the divorce was finalized, I moved to a new place and now enjoy a peaceful life on my own. Previously, my life was disturbed by my indifferent husband and Ashley, along with their unruly children. Now, I relish the comfort of living alone. I have time to reflect on my rushed marriage. I had feared that leaving Jack would leave me without options, enduring his terrible behavior rather than considering divorce. Looking back, I regret not divorcing sooner to avoid wasting time. If I ever decide to remarry, I'll take my time to find someone truly compatible. My name is Catherine Smith. I was married when my husband's son was 16 years old. Yes, my husband was a divorced man with a child. Since I am unable to have children, I was happy to have a son, and for the past 12 years, I've raised him desperately as my own child. That son, Austin, said he was getting married and brought his girlfriend home. I'm thinking of marrying this person. She had an innocent look, and I thought she would make a good wife for Austin. I was moved to tears of joy. However, my son then said, I'm gonna live with my fiancé family. Being an only child, I assumed he would live with us after getting married. So this was quite a shock. Living together? Why not? There's no problem with me living with my fiancé's family, right? That was certainly true. We have a house, but it's just a regular, mass-produced home. There's nothing special to inherit. But you are an only child. She's an only child too. And though our family has nothing to inherit, her family has a distinguished lineage. It makes more sense for me to live with them. Yes, our family has been running a traditional sweet shop for generations. My father's father is the president of the company. I see. In that case, it's understandable for you to live with them. And Dad, you have this person, Austin said, pointing at me. Hearing this, my son's fiancée didn't get angry or say anything like, what a thing to say to your own parents. Instead, she just laughed mockingly. It's okay, this person is just a stepmother. Stepmother? Yes, my father's second wife. Really? It's a cut marriage? That's problematic. The problematic? Yeah. Did you lose his wife? No, we divorced. That's even worse. My parents are very conservative and don't accept divorce. They think that remarriage indicates an immoral person. If they know about it, they might not approve of our marriage. Well, it's the truth. Then, let's just say your wife passed away. Are you kidding? You raised Austin alone after your wife's death. My parents would respect that and would be even more impressed with how well you raised Austin. But what about this person? Remarriage is also frowned upon. My parents believe in only one marriage for life. If they learn about a second marriage, they won't approve of our marriage. Then, she doesn't need to come to the family meeting? Ah, I see. Well, we have to compromise. After all, her family is well established and prestigious. We can't argue against that. This is so sad. My husband was over the moon knowing that my son Austin's fiancée came from a prestigious family. He suggested that it would be best if I, as his stepmother, didn't attend the wedding. So, I guess you didn't attend the wedding. I wouldn't want the engagement called off because of you. I've been looking forward to my son's wedding after raising him for all these years. It can't be helped. It's for the sake of our son. You can just look at the pictures later. How could you? What will we do after the wedding when we see each other? Just say you're a housekeeper. Exactly. It's not like I need you around. Plus, we'll avoid any mother-in-law and daughter-in-law conflicts. I wouldn't do such a thing. You never know. you. Maybe we should just divorce, Divorce? If we're divorced, the lie becomes the truth. We needed you for cleaning and cooking. Till now, but with me around, we don't need you anymore. Hey, you might live with them, but what about me? I'll be alone in this house. Well, maybe we should really make her the housekeeper. I don't want her acting like a parent. That's true. That's just... How can you say such things? I endured everything for 12 years because I thought of him as my own child. But from my son's perspective, I was just someone to clean and cook. What was the point in my 12 years? Was it all just self-indulgence? So it's settled then. The stepmom won't come to the family meeting. We'll say you raised Austin alone after your wife passed away. That works, right? Yes, of course. Now I can marry May with peace of mind. Yes, I'm relieved too. It's good we found out the truth before the family meeting. Otherwise, the wedding might have been called off because of the stepmother. I definitely don't want a stepmother acting like a mother-in-law. How can people be like this? It can't be helped. If you were really a mother, you'd understand. It's for the happiness of our son. If you can't endure this, you're not fit to be a parent. Is that so? Is that how it is? I felt like everyone was against me. What was I for all these years? 12 years. Is enough with the 12 years? 12 years. All right. Thanks for the 12 years of service. The fake is no longer needed, so don't come to the family meeting. The course. If you come and the engagement is broken, I'll resent you for the rest of my life. What? Rejected by everyone. I was left speechless by the shock. On the day of the family meeting, it was a dinner at a fancy restaurant. Being told not to participate, I watched the proceedings from a distance. So, your wife passed away early, and you raised your child alone. That must have been tough. As planned, my husband was playing the role of a grieving widower whose wife had passed away before him. Yes, well, there were various things, but he managed to grow up somehow. Is that so? As the conversation about my husband being a hardworking man continued, a gaudy woman resembling a bar owner approached the table. Austin, long time no see. You've grown so big and respectable. She looked quite flashy as she suddenly appeared. May's family was taken aback, while my husband and son, recognizing her as their ex-wife and real mother, remained silent. Who might you be? I'm this kid's real mother. Call me Christy. It's that. Christy took a seat and called over a waiter. Hey, at another place here? The waiter brought the food. The food here is really good. Nice choice of restaurant. As expected. What is this all about? I heard today was my son's family meeting, since his stepmother wouldn't do. I, his real mother, came in. Stepmother? What do you mean? My husband and Austin shrank, unable to speak. Christy took over the conversation. No, this must be some mistake. You're at the wrong table. This is extremely rude. Please leave at once. What are you trying to act all important for? I won't let you forget your ex-wife. I don't know you. I'm his ex-wife and this child's mother. But just a moment ago. No, don't listen to her. I divorced him when this kid was little. I wanted to take him with me, but his parents were so insistent. They said to leave the child, so I left him crying. It was tough. Oh, but the divorce wasn't because of a mother-in-law issue. By the way, we were told that his mother had passed away. Yes, my wife passed away. That's right. She's a complete stranger. Please leave. Today is an important day. Get up and leave, old lady. Hey, P. Austin. Calling her an old lady. Sorry, I'm shocked he turned out so rude. Are you really his mother? Of course. Then, about her being dead? It's all pretense. They probably thought it sounded better than admitting to a divorce. How ridiculous. That's the kind of ridiculous thing they would do. By the way, did you cure your gambling addiction? Christy turned to my husband and asked. In fact, he had a severe gambling addiction. I didn't know that until we got married. But since we were married and had a child, it wasn't easy to just leave. I stayed, even though life was hard and most of his earnings went to gambling. I kept going because my son called me Mom. You really had a terrible gambling addiction. Even when we were married, we couldn't eat because of your gambling. I thought we were going to starve to death. Did it get better after marrying your current wife, or is it still going on? Don't talk about that here. When else should I ask? It's not like we'll see each other often. If we were, I'd wait for another time, but that's not happening. Christy continued, addressing May's astonished parents. The reason for our divorce was his gambling addiction. He had a terrible addiction. I married him without knowing. It was like marrying just to struggle. My parents kept telling me to divorce him, but we had a child, so it wasn't that simple. I tried hard, but we couldn't. Eventually, we divorced when the kid was small. Gambling addiction is hereditary, isn't it? Yes, there's a theory that it's hereditary. If there's a gambler in the family, 19 will develop a gambling addiction, compared to 5 otherwise. So maybe the son will develop it too. Yeah, I've heard that too. It gets worse with debt problems. Debt? Yeah, they gamble even if they have to borrow money. That would be troublesome. So do you have debts? Oh, but your current wife has been working hard for you, so maybe not. Hey, stop it. Today is the family meeting, you know. So what? But marrying on a lie won't last just like our marriage. So did you quit? That is. Ah, I see. Maybe you even married your second wife without telling her the truth. That's almost like fraud. You're really the worst. Let it out. Have you told this kid about his father's gambling addiction? You should, or your wife might suffer when you start gambling. That is, don't tell me you think because her family is rich, they'll cover your gambling debts. I'm worried because your father would think something that awful. I'm not thinking anything like that. Well, good if you're not. The food here is really delicious. Everyone should eat and enjoy. By the way, what happened to your parents? They passed away 13 years ago. Ah, I see. So you were married 12 years ago? Typical finding someone to take care of you. You can't manage the house on your own. Without a wife, it would be a total mess. Well, men usually aren't good at tidying up. Why did you even come? I didn't invite you. Maybe it was Christy's blatant behavior, but my husband finally snapped back at her. Then, without any shame, Christy brought up my name. But your second wife. Atrin told me. Wait, Catherine did? Yes. Why would you and Catherine? Atrin found me 12 years ago. She said no parent would abandon their child. I was so happy back then. You never sent a single photo, but Catherine contacted me. She sent me photos of Austin growing up and told me all about him. Then she said a stepmother wouldn't do for this family meeting. She was worried Austin would feel awkward, so she asked me to come. But this atmosphere is so tense. This feels like a bunch of liars together. Are you planning to get back with Austin's dad? With Austin's dad? What? No way. Austin has a wonderful mother. And I'm remarried too. I'm not giving up my current happiness. Marrying him would just mean suffering with his gambling. I even discussed today with my husband. What kind of great mother is she? She's just a stepmother. You guys are underestimating her, and you're gonna regret it. Remember, she paid for the total remodel of that old house 10 years ago. Ever wonder where the money came from? I don't know how much you earn, but if she's gone, you're the one who's gonna be in trouble. But I don't care either way. There's no way I'll be in trouble. She doesn't even work. I'm the one paying for everything. If that's what you think, then fine. Sometimes you don't realize what you've lost until it's gone. You probably don't even understand how much she's done for you, desperately trying to fix your gambling addiction. And Austin, you never know when you might develop it. mate, you better be prepared. Just because he hasn't yet doesn't mean he won't ever. Just mind your own business. I'm different from my dad. I won't develop anything. I wonder why she even married you. She's great at cooking, perfect at housekeeping, a real paragon of a wife and mother. With such a good mother around, why did you keep quiet about being remarried? Lying that your wife had died. Your daughter said it was better that way. What? You went along with it just because she said so. Weren't you and Mom saying that while watching TV? Divorce is bad, remarriage is promiscuous. I don't remember saying that. That was while watching a drama. Oh, that was about the main character in the drama. Right, because we're both remarried. You were the child from my previous marriage with my ex-husband. Seriously? But treating someone who raised you for 12 years as a nuisance. I can't let my daughter marry someone like that. You're right. Catherine is the best. She even cares about someone like me. And yet they called her a fake mother. He's no good. She's really that wonderful? Of course. Christy then looked at me and gestured for me to come over. I approached the table, and my husband and son were shocked. Why are you here? Was expected? Weren't you supposed to be at home? I got worried and decided to watch secretly. See? She's wonderful. Worrying about someone else's child's? With such a wonderful mother. But I think she's going to divorce soon. Why? She's been worried about the child for 12 years, devoted to a husband with a gambling addiction, and then called a fake. Of course she's going to divorce. Right. Catherine? Yes. I'm not needed anymore. But I still worry about them. Don't worry. From now on, they can live on their own. They only thought of you as a housekeeper, so you don't need to care. You should live your own life. Okay. I don't mind you leaving, but I'm not paying you any alimony. Alimony? Who do you think you are? I never expected you to pay. Besides, now I can support and even help Catherine. What do you mean? Back then, we were dirt poor, but now I'm remarried. And he's rich, the CEO of a major corporation. No way. I'm not lying. Which company? ABC Corporation. Ever heard of it? ABC. Isn't that a top name in the hotel industry? Yes. My husband is the CEO. So, I can support Catherine no matter what. And I'm the vice president. The vice president of that company. That's a big deal. Which, maybe. But that's not important. Catherine, if you ever need anything, just let me know. But not you guys. Christy said that to my husband. Don't even ask for help. Be independent. Then, Christy pulled out divorce papers. Strike while the iron is hot, right? Here's the divorce form. Sign it quickly. I'll witness it. You don't want to drag this out. Catherine's too kind. It's okay. I was planning to leave today anyway. I signed the divorce form. Now it's your turn. Don't need to think about it. You wanted to turn her into a housekeeper, after all. Of course. I have no lingering feelings for such a woman. My husband quickly signed the divorce papers, perhaps out of pride. May's parents were clearly shocked to see him sign without any hesitation. They then announced we must decline this marriage proposal. After returning home, I packed my belongings without anyone stopping me and left the house. Christy was waiting outside and drove me to my new residence. I'm not sure if you'll like it, but I've arranged a new place for you. You can pay the rent when you're able to afford it. After all, it's our property. Later, my ex-husband and former son contacted me, angrily blaming me for the broken engagement. It's your fault the engagement was called off. If that marriage had gone through, I would have eventually become a president. I could have had an easy life. You ruined everything. Be quiet. The teen, Christy yelled as their voices came through the phone on speaker. Do you think you had the right to speak to her like that? She asked me to replace her because she was worried about Austin, and you turn it into a complaint. Blaming others has its limits. Well, it's still her fault the engagement was called off. If she hadn't called you, everything would have been fine. You mean you would have kept May's parents deceived? If you really wanted to marry, it wouldn't have ended. It's because it wasn't genuine that it fell apart. Pull your heads, you idiots. And Christy hung up the phone. I agreed with Christy and wouldn't have been able to say it myself without her. I was grateful for support. I ended the day on a positive note. However, a month later, they contacted me again. Is Christy there? No, she's not. Well, there was a relieved tone in my ex-husband's voice. The full remodel fee hasn't been paid. Is that so? Just pay it then. I'm no longer involved, so please don't contact me about it. Can I afford it with my salary? If you quit gambling, maybe. That's impossible. You know that as well as I do. Yes, but it's no longer my concern. How did you manage before? I supplemented it with my income. In fact, I paid for the remodel and living expenses. How can that be? You weren't working. You just didn't know, but I was working too. What were you doing? I was doing handmade crafts. All your income went to gambling. So without you, I can't manage. You could if you stopped gambling. I can't stop, as I've told you. So, you have no intention to overcome your gambling addiction. I want to, but it's impossible. I can't go a day without it. Given his repeated insistence that it's impossible and despite claiming he wants to change, it seemed clear he had no real intention to do so. You have to try your best. Anyway, it's no longer my concern. How much debt is left? Well, it will be cleared in about 17 years. 17 years? That's impossible. Please help me. I don't have that kind of money. Please send me some. I'm a stranger now, and wasn't I just a fake mother to your son? I can't help you. You need to handle it yourself. Please, I'm begging you. I can't even afford food. Would never change. I firmly cut off my ex-husband's pleading and ended the call. 6 months later, I heard that my ex-husband, who somehow managed to maintain his lifestyle, ultimately couldn't stop gambling and had to let go of the house. Austin, seeing his father so consumed by gambling, developed a gambling addiction himself. The two of them got deeply hooked on gambling, frequently visiting casinos, ostensibly to increase their living expenses. This only worsened my ex-husband's gambling addiction, and he finally quit his job. Consequently, they couldn't even afford the basic living expenses. Despite living in a cheap apartment, their inability to pay rent due to gambling led them to become homeless, resorting to hotels. Soon, they couldn't even afford the hotel fees and ended up at loan sharks. Borrow money to keep gambling, chasing the dream of a big win. However, as their debts grew out of control, they tried to contact me again. Anticipating this, I changed my phone number so they couldn't reach me. In desperation, they contacted Christy, but they had no chance of getting any money from her. Same with the cold season coming, they were found huddled together in a corner of a park, unable to afford even the hotel fees. Meanwhile, I kept working on my passion for handmade crafts. Thanks to my perseverance and Christy's support, I managed to pay my rent, and eventually, I opened my own store. My crafts began to attract more customers, and my store became very successful. Now, every day I create products filled with dreams for my many customers.